left, right.
All right, welcome to the 112th episode of SipTalk. This is an interesting episode. Our team came from a happy hour, and we recorded in the middle of an apartment party in New York. So it's a small apartment, there's a lot going on. I hope the audio is bearable. I will say that. But it's a pretty cool episode. I think you'll like it. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I will see you on the other end. This is SipTalk. Grab a drink and enjoy.
Of course, it's good.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you guys for joining. This is episode 111 of Sip Talk. We've got a bit of an unconventional setup today. We're at Rosh's apartment on the Upper East Side. We just left an open house for our new office, so you guys who follow us might know a little bit about the fact that my company, a real estate brokerage in Manhattan, is merging with a much larger real estate company in Manhattan. And we had a lot of our agents at the new office, and some of these guys joined us tonight for the open house in the new office. So I'm joined by Kalea. Kalea, would you like to announce your podcast? Kalea has her own podcast.
Yes, so
You speak up.
Oh, okay. Yes. Yes, I have a podcast as well. It's called Married for What, where my husband and we discuss marriage and everything after I do.
Everything after I do. So what we're going to talk about tonight, I'm going to try to keep both of us in frame. We're going to talk about tonight is fidelity. We're going to talk about faithfulness. And we got a couple of people in the background behind us. Pretty mixed group, young and younger. So we're going to talk about faithfulness. We might recruit a couple of other people. But Kalea has been in a relationship for...
I've been in a relationship with my husband for 18 years, and I've been married for 9.
Yes, which is longer than I've been alive. It's a very long time. I'm a big fan. I'm a big proponent of being in a committed relationship where you are monogamous. And, I listen to a lot of Loveline, which is you ever heard of Loveline?
I'm older than you, Justin.
So you do? You have?
Yes.
Oh, so you know Loveline. Loveline is James, you listen to Loveline?
I don't listen to it, but I know what it is.
All right, Loveline is a radio show with Dr. Drew Pinsky. He's a drug and sexual health doctor, and he's joined by Adam Carolla, who's a comedian who used to be in the Man Show. And it's a really good dynamic between Dr. Drew and Adam Carolla about relationships and sexual health and drugs and just everything kind of real. So that's it. James the Bosnian of Boswell out of South Carolina, accountant, philosopher, referee, bartender. James, what are you drinking down there?
Sticking with the Bush Ice, and I'm doing some straight bourbon as well.
All right. Well, Kalea, do you have a drink? All right. So we got a lot of people around us, which makes it really tough to focus right now. But we have a hookah, and we don't have any drinks. So my first question to each of you, and I'm really sorry for this, Kalea. What's the longest you've been monogamous?
3.5 years? No, less than pretty much 3 years on the dot.
Okay. And that was a good relationship. It ended probably, my guess, I don't know, is not because of you not being monogamous.
No, it ended because of the radically different scenario, and I wouldn't really categorize it as a good relationship.
Okay. Kalea, I assume you've been in a
Monogamous
give you
relationship.
benefit of the doubt.
For
18 years.
no,
25 years.
No.
You were committed way before.
No.
Serena, I'll speak to hookah for a drink. You want to trade me a drink? I will give you the hookah. All right.
No. So I've been in a committed relationship for the last 12 years. Before that, little backstory. My husband has an older son. His son will be 15 this year. So there was a break between when we got together and then him having his son. But during that time, it wasn't he wasn't very monogamous. So we would go back and forth together. No, that's yours.
You got him a drink?
Yeah.
All right, cool.
But that's the thing about the beginning of a relationship.
But it wasn't the beginning.
Well, you said you went back and forth.
Yeah, but we met when I was 19. He had his son at 22.
Okay.
And then during that time, we had fooled around back and forth. So we weren't together. He was with his son's mother.
Interesting. This gets a bit dicey.
Yeah, so
I like it.
I'm like, what side do you want me to be on this?
Well,
Because
no,
I've been
I'm
on both.
I'm not asking you what side you want to be on. I like the realism of actual relationships. You know, I think what most people learn from relationships is what the parents had. And I actually think a lot of what people comprehend from the parents is bullshit, which sets them up for more bullshit in real life.
So my family is with the men. I think this is where it's also going to go. The men weren't faithful in either side of my.
So your parents are not still together?
My parents are still together.
No way, really?
Yes. So my parents have been together for, this will be 40 years that my parents have been together.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
And
So-
it's been smooth sailing
No.
from your perspective.
God no.
When it comes to fidelity.
No.
No.
God no. No,
Really?
I have a younger brother. Yeah.
With a different parent.
Yes.
Interesting.
And it was like that for on both sides of my family.
Really?
My grandfather, he was not faithful to my grandmother either side.
So I want to give you a little my perspective, and I want to get back into yours. But my father died when I was much younger, so I have been painted this picture perfect ideal of a relationship that I don't think is attainable.
Mhm.
But that was a picture that was painted to me from a young age, because obviously I didn't get to see a 30, 40, 50-year relationship play out. I got to see a decade-long, a 15-year-long relationship play out. And, you know, my mother's still around, and she paints the best pictures of the relationship.
Mhm.
My father's, as far as my mind is concerned, a god. You can't do it. Somebody dies, you don't point out the negatives. You here for the hookah? All right. So for me, relationships that are anything less than ideal are a bit perplexing, because I don't understand any of it. But I want to get into our new relationship, our demographic that listens to the podcast, the 20-year-old, the 30-year-old. We have people that are older than that, and their perception of relationships. And I really want to get into the fact that relationships aren't ideal, and that if you want to build a great relationship, it takes a lot of work.
Yeah, absolutely. My
And
husband had to grow up in order for us to, and he tells you all the time, he does not sugarcoat it. He said he had to grow up in order for him to come back to me. That's how.
I like it. Serena, do you mind telling these guys they're going to be quiet because we're live? So we're in Raj's apartment here in the Upper East Side. We are. So Adam.
It's a blend. You know.
So, but I think a lot of perspective when it comes to new relationships is one.
Can I get in on this?
Can we finish?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, thank you. But I think a lot of relationships, people are coming from different places in life. And James, you might understand. James, you've probably done a little more dating than I have. I don't know. You're in South Carolina.
Oh, that's
Maybe
Serena's.
different perspective on dating. But when you meet somebody, they're what they have in their life is a totally different place. So you guys are merging your lives, and
I've never gotten to the point where I've merged lives with anybody.
you've never gotten to the point where you live with a lady before.
Yeah, that wasn't merging lives. We had separate bedrooms, which actually I'm going to defend because I think it's great to be able to have your own space. And like, you want to sleep in the same bed? Okay, cool. You want to have a night kind of to yourself? Fine. You want to have like a little bit of space to yourself where no one's bothering you? Having separate bedrooms allows for that.
But the question is, where do things go from there?
Things don't need to go anywhere from there. If you're happy with it, why change?
Well, and how did that work out?
The reason why the relationship failed had nothing to do with the bedroom situation.
Okay, fair enough. But what I was saying 2 minutes ago was that people come from different places in their life, and oftentimes, in my opinion, one person is a little more in terms, I don't know, what would you call it, raising a family. Because ultimately, what are relationships for? It's somebody that you want to, if you're lucky, but your goal is to spend a lot of time with that person, right? And maybe raise a family.
Yeah.
Otherwise, what's a relationship for? Fucking, it's like, that's cool.
Well, what?
But you have to define. You have to define whether
With that relationship.
you have to define whether you're in it for whether you're in it for fucking. You boil it down. You're in it for fucking, or you're in it for building a family and a future. Not just a family, because they're two different things. Building a future, or building.
But what does building a future mean? That's a really poorly defined term.
Okay, building a stable future with someone else. How long have you and I been friends, James?
30 years.
30. Yeah, I would say maybe more. 30
First grade. Coming up
So-
on 30 years.
Exactly. So you can, and how many people have you met who are friends who have come and gone?
Don't have a total for you. It's
A lot.
large.
A lot, right?
Oh yeah.
So you have to decide, James, how often do we agree?
Probably about 85%, 90% of the time.
I doubt that. I watched SipTalk. There's no way you guys.
No, the reason that, it's just as intentionally being stupid or
Well,
contradictory.
the point is that we don't agree, right? But we've agreed that we're friends, and no matter what, our friendship will endure.
I think on the key issues we agree on a lot of things.
But when it comes to relationships, you may have points in the relationship where you don't agree with somebody. And the issue is you reach detrimental points.
Mhm.
And you want different things, right? And ultimately, the relationship endures or it doesn't. But I feel like nowadays, relationships don't last. And I think a lot of that is you have so many options.
Well, I think that you're completely right about the options, where it's a combination of options and the grass is always greener phenomenon,
But
where
that's a good point, is that the options look better, but then you end up in that option. And you end up going down a route that isn't actually better. It's just a different option.
I also think, now I'm not really subject to this because I'm not on any social media, but I think that social media plays a pretty strong role, a strong negative role in relationships, because you're only exposed to either the absolute worst of other people's relationships or more often the absolute best of other people's relationships. And I've talked about this before, where when people post stuff on social media, they're posting things to brag or show off about what they just did. And so when people post about their relationships, it's going to be the vacation that they went on with their significant other, or the gift that they got, or an awesome date that they went on, or something like that. They're not going to post the boring day-to-day drudgery of a relationship. And so when you're seeing posts on social media, all you're seeing are other people's best moments in the relationship, but no one's posting about the boring day where they made breakfast, went to work, and then went to sleep watching Netflix together.
But that's what a relationship is.
Yeah, but that's not what you're seeing on social media, because people's not people aren't posting about that.
Rush.
Yes, sir.
And so
The people in the bedroom. Volume issues.
if you're in a
Sorry, James,
relationship,
we got a lot of people here who are.
yeah, no,
interested
but
in
if you're in a
podcasts.
relationship and you look at your relationship and say, man, like these people were on vacation in Italy and these people went to Fiji, and you say, we woke up, went to work, and then like watched the NBA playoffs together and fell asleep at 10:15. What is this relationship? I could be doing so much better I could be dating somebody that's taking me to Italy.
Exactly, and everything online, especially, and James is not on social media at all, which I would love to be able to, but obviously my career involves being on social media. So, and obviously even the podcast involves being on social media. So it's a really difficult place to be. But also I live in reality, and I'm very much aware of reality. And social media for me is a promotional networking type of tool. So I understand what reality is, and I've had enough relationships that when you find, I don't know, I feel like finding somebody that you want to work hard for. Actually, I want to hold that back. I don't think you should have to work that hard. You find somebody you like, and you can speak to the working hard.
So my husband and I were actually talking about this. When you go into a marriage, you have this thing that it's like it's supposed to be 50-50. But it's not guaranteed that throughout the marriage it's going to be 50-50. There's going to be times where it's like this person is putting in 60, this person's putting in 40, or the dynamic changes. And then you have to be able to communicate with each other in order to kind of balance that back out. So
Well, you're also living different lives. So he's going through things that you may not be privy to.
yeah, but
And then he's coming home and having to.
I mean, but even if he can't go into details, he can still explain to me what's going on in his life. He doesn't have to shut me completely out.
No, I don't think he has to show you completely out. But you guys have to. I mean, I have a lot of rough days, and I have a lot of rough days, and I get home and try to put on the best face. I don't always share everything, right?
But then that could be kind of detrimental too, because then you're like bottling up things inside.
Okay, but imagine that I'm going through a lot of turmoil. Do I want to introduce that to the relationship?
If it helps, yes, because at some point you might just feel like.
Well, if it helps, yes. But what if it's an immense amount of turmoil where it could be detrimental to that relationship?
At the very least, you owe disclosure.
We're on the same team.
A reasonable amount of disclosure. Hold on one second. Guys, you can't tell everybody what it
I'm
is.
sorry, I need to renew my library pass.
I need you to- Sorry, we're in an apartment where we're talking. We got a lot of relationship talk going on, and we just left.
You're ruining your relationship with you guys. I'm just kidding. Obviously, I'm kidding. SipTalk is the best. I'm going to shut up. Don't fire me.
I mean, that's my view, is that if you're going through something, you might not owe 100% details, but you need to at least disclose why you're acting a certain way.
Yes, and I agree with that. What I'm saying is that you may not want to disclose 100% of the details. You may want to share that you're going through something, and it may be a bit much.
I think everybody's relationship is different in how you communicate with each other. So my husband and I literally are best friends. So we talk to each other about everything.
I think that's a major important element to be. James and I are incredible. We knew each other since we were 5 or 6 years old.
Right.
6.
And I'll tell James pretty much everything. But there may be some details I leave out. Not because it's just kind of irrelevant to that friendship.
Well, and despite the fact that more your life than mine, I would say that we're both kind of private people. Like it doesn't show so much for you, but
Yeah, but
I've also known you for
there's
30 years.
there's a lot that happens outside of life, outside of the podcast, that's private,
hmm
and you don't share so much. But I don't know. My major thinking really, when it comes down to the entire reason for this podcast, is what ruins relationships, and that's my fear. You know, I have a good relationship right now. I don't want to ruin it. I think I'm sure it can be ruined, but I think it's on a very good track. But I've had bad relationships in the past, and what I'm trying to figure out is how do you salvage, not even salvage, how do you have a good relationship and keep it good?
I think it comes down to communication.
And Kalea comes from a great place because she's had this super long-term relationship that's gone up and down, and communication, super important. Communication, but also being on the same page with what you want, I think, is also really important. But what is a ruiner of relationships?
Ruin of relationships is unmet expectations.
I see why me to let you go.
That's a good one.
It's definitely a ruin because you go in thinking something is going to be some way, and when it's not that way, you start to feel like, well, is this where I want to be? Grass is greener on the other side.
But speak up a little bit.
So I would agree. I think that one of the problems that we're seeing right now is that people are entering relationships with unrealistic expectations.
That's true too.
What are those expectations? What are you? So you start dating somebody 2021. Start dating somebody 2021. You're attracted to them. They're attracted to you. You go out. You have a nice date. You guys connect on a few levels, right? Like you have a couple of drinks, which obviously alcohol is a major lubrication, especially in the first couple of dates. And then what happens to set in is reality after that, right? Like you can paint a great picture in a Picasso style picture.
Well, so I think that everyone's expectations for relationships are going to be different, but probably the biggest problem early on that will manifest itself later is if you meet somebody and most of the things are good, but there are a couple things that you're not so sure about, and you expect that over time the person's going to change, either that they're going to change on their own or you're going to be able to change them. And that's probably for me the easiest bad expectation that kills a relationship, is that you ignore either minor or major problems early on because of the excitement, and then when the excitement like tapers off, you're left with these minor or major problems, and now you're invested in the relationship. There's been some amount of time, and now you've got these problems.
That's the hotness quotient. You're super attracted to somebody who's hot, and then that becomes a regular, right? Like, and your sexual attraction to that person wears the fuck off. And then what are you left with?
You're left with someone that you can't have a conversation with.
Well, and that's so. I mean, that's my Instagram argument. Like everybody on Instagram in a bathing suit is hot as fuck, right? Like,
thanks to Photoshop, but yeah.
Not even Photoshop. That fucking filter on your phone does it, right? And
I'm using Photoshop as a catch-all.
Okay, fair enough. But the reality of the fact that you have to spend the other 23 and a half hours with that person.
No, you're giving yourself a lot of credit there.
Good looks are not, obviously good looks are important, but the Instagram visual of a person is not reality, right? Like we used to look at magazine covers and be like, oh, that's not fair. And now you walk through the mall and there's pictures of people in underwear that are going overweight in underwear. But there's
we've already had this talk.
And what's that?
We've already had this talk. I'm all in favor of unrealistic magazine pictures. That's what you're aiming for. You don't expect to achieve it.
But yeah, you're right. But when you see everybody looking good, you know, having good looks is kind of a prerequisite. Somewhat. Having an appealing look, not good look. I think that initial attractive type, you're gonna attract somebody first. But what happens is you go on a date with that person, you meet the real person, but that's still not even the real person, right?
But is it okay? Because looks does play a factor. But what if it's not, based on the first look? What if you're not meeting this person at the bar? Maybe you're meeting them in another social setting, like you're at a party and someone, introduces you to them, and you talk to them.
Well, we just came from an event where you met certain people that you were told were important, right?
Yeah.
And you don't know the reality of that person, right?
Right.
So it's very funny to meet people that you're told are important, and then you're told they're an important person, right? So
Right.
something about that aspect makes you want to get to know them.
Right.
But let's fast forward 4 months. You've been on a half dozen dates with that person, and what's the reality?
The reality is that you're interested.
So, James, you're dating somebody, you're 2-3 months in, 6 months in, sexual attraction, the aspect where you see that person and you get this, what am I doing? So when I'm taking my vitamins,
Can you refine that question?
I see somebody, my groin is like, ugh, right?
Well, you should probably go to the bathroom.
Wait, somebody's growing?
My groin,
What?
my groin is like full speed ahead, right? Like, and it took me a long time into my late 20s or early 30s. Like, oh, this is a primal urge, right? It's a primal urge, and your groin is like full speed ahead, plant a seed. But then through a series of relationships, you realize, oh wait, you gotta raise the children. You gotta have a future with that person.
You
It's
see,
not
like this is utterly irrelevant to me. You're speaking a different language now.
because you don't want to have kids. Because you don't want to have
Like, there's no appeal to any of your arguments here.
Primally speaking, you meet somebody you're attracted to, your body is saying you want to plant a seed and have children. That's sexual attraction, by the way. You may not want to have children, but the sexual attraction that you have is the fact that you want to have children with somebody. All right, whether you want to have children or not, you want to fuck. That's what
Yeah,
it is.
there's a difference.
That lizard brain part of you that wants to sleep with the other person. By sleep, I mean stay awake and exert calories. The issue is after that and how long you can stay together. And really, I want the topic of the podcast to be fidelity, right? So you're dating somebody for 6 months, you decide you want to be with them, but something happens. And in a lot of cases, we get a lizard brain. I don't know if that even
Well, so the question the thing that I have is I believe that all successful relationships are based on compromise.
But
that-
how much compromise is reasonable before people decide to seek greener pastures?
You have to look at it as, well, can I do better? And that's why so many people are leaving relationships right now, is they think that they can do better. But you have to realize, can I do better than what I have right now? Are these issues that I'm seeing something that can be compromised and resolved or not? And that's why I'm currently single, is there are a couple things that I'm not willing to compromise on, and that winnows my dating pool considerably.
All right, let me hit some comments real quick. We got Hannah Moon. Honesty and being open is key. Vulnerability and intimacy are the things people will stay for. You want to read the next one?
Looks will get my attention, but your personality is what will keep it.
Next one.
Laughter gets my attention. There has to be a certain attraction physically. However, it's not everything. They could be hot as hell and be a dick or bitch.
Duck or bitch.
No. She corrected
But
Well, that's all right. All of those comments are correct. It's like, you have to start with a physical attraction. It's really hard to start without that. But physical attraction only gets you so far.
Well, yeah, but I don't think there's any argument against the fact that physical attraction is kind of a prerequisite. Would you disagree with me on that?
No, I wouldn't. Although, there's countless stories of people talking about how when they first met their significant other, husband, wife, whatever, they didn't initially find them attractive, but over time that grew. To me, that doesn't make a lot of sense, but it happens often enough that I recognize the phenomenon.
But that's your broccoli argument. I never liked broccoli.
But I wasn't initially attracted to my husband. I met him at work, and I just saw that he was a nice person when I initially met him. I was involved with somebody else, so my attention wasn't towards him. But even so,
Well, I met when I moved down, and forever for. And I was very attracted to her, but I didn't make any moves.
right.
But I had that attraction.
But I didn't have that
You didn't have
attraction.
that.
No, not
You
at
didn't
all.
have that physical groinal.
No, I didn't. I was focused on the other person I was with. Like, so I didn't even like, oh, he's cute. No, it was just like, oh, he's nice. But I didn't find him
I
attractive.
had that. This person's very attractive. I'm busy. I made no moves and that's what I want to talk about. This monogamous fidelity, faithfulness.
Mhm.
I didn't make any moves.
Right.
I was with someone else.
Mhm.
Wow.
I mean, I've
Not
had
an
that,
option. Move on. Like life continues.
but I've had that too. Even when I was, with somebody, I'd be like, oh, he's really cute.
All right. So let me ask you, what made you not make that move?
I was with somebody.
What made you not make that move?
I was with somebody.
What made you not make that move?
I think she was with somebody.
I was with somebody. However, my relationship with that person started to, we weren't seeing each other. We weren't communicating. So I was feeling a little neglected. So when my husband came around, he engaged me with conversation, which I was missing. And so during when I was with simultaneously. So when we were engaged in conversation, I was like, wow, this person's really somebody that I could, kind of connect with. And so I was just thinking about just being friends, but then we started flirting. The flirtation came.
Let me ask you a question. I don't know your podcast. I don't know how deep you guys get on your podcast. But at a certain point, you were in a relationship.
Mhm.
That relationship started to degrade. You were talking to somebody else. Right.
I'm sorry.
That relationship started to degrade.
Mhm.
Can I ask at what point there was a transition?
So my husband and I had gone on our first date together, and we had a romantic encounter. I'm just gonna say that. And after that romantic encounter, I felt guilty. So from my guilt, the following day, I broke up with my husband.
So the fidelity of a relationship has a certain I'm trying to look for a religious word, like a sacramony or something like that.
Mhm.
Being in a relationship and being faithful comes like you have a certain amount of like holiness almost with it, right? Like a certain amount of. But I've had very short-term encounters where you're like, oh, that was kind of wrong. Let's see if we can right this. And then you try to turn it into a relationship. Right. And some of those didn't work out. Many of those didn't work out.
Yeah, shocking the audience.
But you have a feeling that you want to make right of it. Like you're like, oh, well, want to make right of that.
Well, let me ask you this question. Well, hold on, I'm gonna two things. One, so when I was taking my business law class, the professor talked about relationships briefly. He's like, if you're in a monogamous relationship and the other person cheats, you have to end the relationship. And some people in the class are a little bit confused. Like, no, those are the rules. Like, you're in a monogamous relationship. They weren't monogamous. You end the relationship. There's no negotiating on this. It's over. It was just black and white for him.
Well, but that's kind of how that works. The other person doesn't uphold.
But what about the
Sorry, go ahead.
right? It's like no matter how you feel about that person, no matter how much you may love them, they broke the rules. You have to end it.
That's the thing about relationships is that
It's not that black and white.
sure,
But
It's
that's what
not
the
that
law
black and
professor was
white.
saying, and I agree with him.
but at the end of the day, it is that black and white. So you guys are operating on kind of agreed upon terms, right? Like I go to a restaurant, I order a chicken dish. They're not going to serve me bad chicken, right? They might. Some restaurants do.
Right.
But I operate on an agreement with that restaurant. They're going to serve me chicken that's not bad, right?
Right.
Fresh chicken. Now, I can eat at that restaurant 125 times. I can eat at the restaurant for the next 16 years. Now, on the off chance they give me bad chicken, I'll never eat there again, right? So now you may go to a restaurant, offhand, different restaurant, they give you great chicken, and you're like, fuck, that's my favorite restaurant. They used to give me good chicken. This one is better.
Right.
And you're like, fuck. Like now when it comes to relationships, there's no agreement between you and this restaurant and you and that restaurant. You go to a restaurant, you're with somebody, and it's not an implied agreement, it's an explicit agreement, effectively, right? Like whether you talk about it or not, 2 years in, 4 years in, whatever it is, there's no question about it.
So hold on, you're leading to my next question, which is I feel like in the last 5 years or so, the concept of open relationships has gotten a lot more popular.
But yeah, along with there's a strong correlation to failed relationships.
That may be because I don't know how big it is in New York. It's not big at all in South Carolina, but it's a big thing out in California. My brother isn't part of one, but he has a lot of friends that are. And when they were explaining it to me, I just said, that just sounds like breaking up with extra steps.
Yeah, no shit.
Like,
I listen to a lot of Loveline, a lot of Dr. Drew, and the general rule is when you introduce a third person in a relationship, the relationship crumbles. You have to have.
but then there's like this new phenomenon called being in a pansexual relationship.
What is that?
It's when you sleep with zebras.
No.
No. So
Explain this to me, please.
So being in a pansexual relationship,
You speak up.
okay. So being in a pansexual relationship, you're pretty much open to being with a female or a male. So
No.
Right. So you have a boyfriend. You can be with somebody who is married, who also is in a pansexual relationship, and then be in just like a friendly relationship with another person. It's weird, the dynamics.
I don't know. So like, are you sexual with the other people, or are you only sexual with one person?
No, you're sexual amongst all those different people.
That sounds messy.
It does, but you have an understanding.
No, it gets messy.
It does get messy, but there are times where people are just in understanding that this
I
is
need
what it
juice in my
is,
phone.
this is what it is.
But that's the issue, is it gets messy. It gets messy. And a lot of relationships get ruined. Right here, I gotta plug it in back. A lot of relationships get ruined because of the understanding that, sorry, we get a
Can you move it there?
low battery type situation here.
No. You
Oh,
disconnected
that's
it.
unplugged. Yeah, I'm sorry. I got it, Rush. Don't worry. Sorry, we got a low iPhone situation. There's iPhone 12s, iPhone 11s.
Give me the other end.
No, don't worry. We're fully
Oh.
yeah, we
Let me
fucked this up
refresh your
hard.
drink.
But I think when you start reaching outside of your relationship for sexual, what's the word I'm looking for? Like sustenance or
Just being
what's the word I'm looking for? Like being fulfilled. If you're looking to be fulfilled outside of your relationship,
I say
sexually-
you go to a strip club.
Well, there's a lot of. Let me pause on that. What he just said is easier topic to tackle. When you're in a relationship and your partner goes to a strip club, how do you feel about that?
I'm fine.
You
In fact,
feel-
I want to go with them. And I'm just that cool type of person.
Well, I think it depends on the partner, depends on the relationship, and it really depends on the people that are involved. Like some people just like get excited by, tits and pussy. Right? At strip club, we're mostly talking about women's strip clubs, I think.
Yeah.
But some women get really, if they're in a relationship with a guy and the guy goes to a strip club with his friends, they get really territorial and really defensive and really, really, really angry and upset. To me, a relationship, the sexual element of a relationship is 30 to 40% of that relationship. I think to me, there's always going to be a sexual element of a relationship, but there's way more important things in a relationship. The connection, the seeing eye to eye, the having future goals. Like those are way much more major things in a relationship. The wanting to raise a family, which is not in, James does not want to have children.
Right.
But how do you have a 10, 12, 30, 40-year relationship with somebody that doesn't want to have children? What's that based on?
You have to have that conversation early. Because
But you have to have the common goals of being in that relationship, right?
Yeah, if your common goals are not to have children, then you're fine.
then you're fine. That's what I'm
Okay,
saying. You
sure,
have to
but-
have that conversation early because my friend, her husband had a divorce because he found out that his first wife didn't want children with him, but it was never discussed
But
prior to that.
yeah, I think the children. James is pretty good when it comes to relationships. He meets somebody, he tells them, "Hey, I don't want to have children."
Oh no, I bring it up really early because I'm just like, let's not waste any time on this one. If that's something that you're interested in, look elsewhere.
I had a brief relationship before my current relationship. My current relationship is very strong, very good, very happy, beyond happy with it. My life, obviously, my life. But I had a relationship before my current relationship where the partner didn't want to have children, and that was kind of a deal breaker for me.
But that's what I'm saying. That conversation has to be had early because it goes back to unrealistic expectations. You think that you can change this person later on, like, oh, they're gonna change, they're gonna see how we work well together, and then the family is gonna come in. And it's
Well, I
just
think
like,
that's why James in South Carolina, right? Right?
what does staying in South Carolina have anything to do
Southern-
with
Oh, it has very much to do
You're
with it.
from New York, through and through?
through and through?
Yeah,
but
yeah,
my
Southern-
family's actually from Georgetown, so
Georgetown, where?
South Carolina.
All right.
That's not far from here.
So
I
the
know.
Southern culture is about building families, eating. What's that stuff that's like porridge?
Grits.
Grits, yeah, like it's a different world. Is my point. It's a different world.
But to be fair, my family from the South have children outside of their marriage as well.
That's not an unsouthern thing.
No,
See?
yeah, but the funny thing is the United States, the Puritan culture that is the Protestant, Catholic, Jewish American culture is having children in a relationship, having that mother, father, 2 or 3 children, and anything outside of that is a clusterfuck when it comes to culture. And it's fucked up because back in the day when the Puritans came over on the Mayflower and they were fucking goats because I don't, for whatever reason they were fucking goats, a lot of people were out of line. So for whatever reason the American culture has proceeded to be this almost quasi-Puritan culture when the U.S. has people from all over the place, and that's not how the rest of the world works when it comes to having
It's
children.
Irish.
Got an Irish guy in here.
Well,
Not the
let me
most-
just
What's the
let me
story?
just throw some statistics out here for you. Like I've done the
Irish
math.
people 100% have a better time than anybody else.
Sorry, James.
Sip
Stats.
talk.
According to the Irish.
Yeah, well, I mean, who else would you ask?
I estimate that I knocked down my potential dating prospects between 90 and 98% just by saying I don't ever want to have kids.
I'd estimate that also. So, where are you going with it?
That I think it's probably less severe in big cities like New York or LA or San Francisco, but in the South, where it's very much a cultural thing, where religion plays a bigger role, where family plays a bigger role, the expectation, especially with women, is that women are socialized to expect to get married and have kids.
Where I was going with that is a lot of cultures, men don't stick around. Men impregnate and move on. Should we bring Carlos into this? Carlos, can we bring you on? Can we, Raj, can we pull out the other chair? So we're gonna bring Carlos on. This is the probably messiest podcast we've ever had when it comes to audio, just in general. The video, you can see a gazillion things going on. We got Carlos, and we want to talk about fidelity and kind of the singular family, the nuclear family relationship. Carlos, pull this over. Pull it slide a little closer. So Carlos, can you get on the camera here? Carlos, slide right over. Carlos works for the Julia Group, the brokerage. He's a real estate agent. He's actually badass. He's a very good agent. But Carlos comes from a culture outside of the American culture. Right? You grew up here.
I grew up in America.
Right. Can I ask you a favor? Can you just peek your head over there? Carlos is what? Are you 6'3"?
6'2", I think.
Carlos 6'2", he thinks. Can you peek your 6'2" head over there and just say, shut the fuck up?
Can you guys keep it down?
Carlos just offered a pussy. Carlos, I want you to talk from the lungs.
I have asthma and I smoke. Can you guys keep it down, please?
All right, so we're gonna bring Carlos on. We got a lot going on because we came from a little merger meeting for the Julia Group, the brokerage. And we got Carlos here. Carlos is going to talk about different culture when it comes to being in a relationship and being a father.
Yeah.
And so you came from New York and Georgia culture.
No, South Carolina.
I'm sorry, South Carolina. What was the city in South Carolina?
Georgetown.
Georgetown, South Carolina.
so?
That's my tip. But
No, it's still like it.
so Carlos is. Well, introduce yourself.
Well, my name is Carlos. How's it going? I pretty much grew up in New York. That's just. But culturally, I spent the first 4 years of my life actually in the Caribbean, Dominican Republic to be exact. Between Dominican Republic and Haiti, because I'm from the whole island pretty much. But when it comes to the majority of like my upbringing was pretty much the Dominican upbringing.
So who's Dominican in your family?
My mom
And your father?
Haitian.
Wow.
No shit. So
That's tough.
well,
Because that island is not good.
so
that island
the
is not
division
good.
between Haiti, and Dominican Republic. So it's on the island of Hispaniola.
Yeah.
And there's a very solid divide between Haiti and Dominican Republic.
Yeah.
So, but you claim Dominican.
Pretty much. I mean, that's the side that I grew up in. Going back to the infidelity or fidelity part, that was there's definitely a difference in culture. I can't really speak on my perspective just because I don't.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
How many people in your peer group, right? Like the brothers, the neighbors you grew up with, the friends you grew up with, have a father and mother that are a nuclear family, right? Like the father and mother stay together, right? And they have children together.
Actually, surprisingly, a lot.
Why do you say surprising?
Because I mean, the reason why I say surprisingly is just because of
Jazz, we're live.
What's that?
We're live.
surprisingly. The reason why I say surprisingly is just because I mean, growing up
Culturally.
I mean, growing up in the inner city, like, you know, at least my friends so happen to have that nuclear family, but a lot of my other like peers and like I would call them acquaintances didn't.
But your neighbors, right? Like the people you know.
Yeah, for the most part, yeah, they have a nuclear family, actually including my mother. My grandma was married. My grandma was married to my grandfather before he passed since 1967 and hasn't been apart since.
But I know in like DR, right? Because I have a lot of Dominican
Speak
families.
up, speak up.
I have a lot of Dominican
Yeah.
friends as well, where the father has two families.
Yeah, no, yeah. My grandfather has has had his fifth child has a fifth. There's four with my grandma, and then there's a fifth stray one.
But let me throw this out there. America, the United States, very Puritan, Mayflower,
Yeah.
flew, sailed over in the Mayflower, and they were very Puritan, right?
Yeah.
And they wanted to, you sleep with your wife, you have no other children, right?
Yeah.
You have this nuclear family, and then what the fuck happened across the United States, right? People started fucking Indians, they started fucking everybody else,
And
started fucking goats. Sorry, I should throw this in context. But now we're here in 2020, 2021, and we're trying to build family values.
Yeah.
We're trying to build families, right? And great that you had. I mean, you're saying your mother and your father are still together?
No. That's actually the opposite. It's my father. My father is a crazy man. You know.
So,
hold on. You gotta get into it.
That's what I'm talking about. Is that we have this Puritan roots when it comes to families, and
I don't think that's true anymore, though.
but that's what I'm saying. Is
Can
we
we have
have
that
these
conversation?
ideals, and then you can point to the ideals. You're talking about your grandparents being together for a certain amount of time.
Well, yeah, my
And-
grandparents just had their like 59th anniversary, and I
Your
think
grandparents
that's
just had
crazy.
their 59th anniversary.
Crazy.
So maybe you want to join, share that.
Yeah.
So we have Danushi. What's your jump behind these guys? Because I think that's incredible. I think that's really
crazy.
different.
That's not normal.
So this is Danushi.
I'm gonna scooch in here.
And Danushi, where are you from?
I'm
Queens?
from Jersey.
Jersey.
Originally from Queens, from Jersey, born and raised. but
Okay, and your heritage.
I'm Sri Lankan.
She's from. You're not from. Your parents are from Sri
Yeah, my
Lanka.
parents are from Sri Lanka.
And your parents are nuclear.
First generation born Sri Lanka.
First generation. Enunciate all the syllables. Right?
Yeah.
So, but what I want to talk about is the fact that, I mean, I'm third generation Italian, Swedish American, weird ass mix. But for the most part, I mean, I got a little mix early on in my family. My grandfather left and somebody else, and blah, blah, blah. But we had this weird American ideal where you want to have parents together.
Well, yeah, like the whole
So,
idea was.
but I don't.
Like,
But I think that's this weird puritanical ideal that we don't
it's
have.
not.
I think it's this weird puritanical ideal that your parents are still together.
No.
Okay, your parents still together.
Yeah.
Your parents still together. My father passed away when I was super young, and I have this Picasso painted of my father. He was a perfect human. But I feel like that's not exactly the case when it comes to history.
No.
So, what you
Like
were
what
saying about
painting
your
is,
parents,
right?
was that?
What painting is. No, but like
So
what?
tell me a little about
What,
your.
what Pablo Picasso painting really like? Can you look at it and be like, all right, like that's an
That's
easy
perfect.
painting to
So
look
tell
at?
me a
Like,
little bit
no.
about your heritage
None of
and
it.
your parents that are still together.
Is it?
The way that Sri Lankans grow up is like normal, where it's just like not normal, I guess, but to the point where it's like you grow up in a family mindset where it's like it's family oriented. You're gonna grow up in that family mindset.
Super
like,
nuclear, right?
Yeah, and like my parents grew up like they loved each other like from the beginning, and then like maybe it deterred like.
Were they
after
set
that,
up?
But like no, they were not set up.
Who's left?
Like,
Sit now.
my mom was very young, at maybe like 12 or 13 or 16 maybe, and like my dad came in as like my mom's brother's friend. So like he came into the family, and like that's very new to like.
James, our audio is good, yeah?
With the exception of all the background noise.
But you can hear Danushi, yeah?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, like it came into like, oh, all right, like this kid's coming in to like, this is my brother's like friend, and like she met him through that, and like that's how like people like meet back then, or if they don't, they meet
Through an
like
introduction?
family. Yeah, like it's not like something where it's just like. Normally, it would be something where it's like, all right, like maybe families will meet together and then they'll meet.
But
But like,
your mother, father were introduced.
yeah, they were like introduced like somehow through like family friends, and like it worked out somehow.
And then? And
And then it didn't work on then now they're still together, and they're still, now it works out again. So it's just like that's just like
But do you have to deal? So your parents were introduced young,
yeah.
and
Very
how
young.
old were your parents when you were born?
I was no, my mom was maybe 23 when she
Wow,
had
that's very.
yeah, very young.
How old were you when your daughter was born?
I was 26.
Oh, your first child, right?
Yep.
Your daughter, your only child, right?
My only.
Carlos, you don't have kids,
No, thank God.
and your parents are not so together,
No.
and they were together when you were born.
For the first year and a half.
Okay, and then what happened?
Well, this is where it gets a bit interesting, and you know,
But this is where it gets cool
Yeah.
for our topic. You got emotions and everything else involved.
yeah, no. And me personally, looking back at it, I wouldn't. I mean, I guess for the average person, it would have been like a traumatic like growth.
But
Um,
I think as far as anybody's concerned, ladies, your mother is the rock.
Yeah.
Your mother's the anchor. Your mother's the North Pole, right?
Mhm.
So sorry to
No,
interrupt, but I think as far as any children are concerned, the mother's the North
Yeah.
Pole.
yeah, the mother is there to nurture and.
All right, so what happened?
Well, my pops,
Daddy
know,
wasn't there.
yeah,
Daddy wasn't there.
my father was. He met this Canadian woman and got with her just for the sole purpose of the citizenship, and from there, you know, his
But your mom's not the Canadian one. Yeah?
no.
So your
He
mother
left
and
my-
father made you,
Yeah,
and then your father found
Dip,
Canadian
yeah.
citizenship.
he went. One of his friends was set him up with this Canadian girl. They're like, hey,
This was too.
yeah, this was like this was a year. Like my mother, and my father were together for the first year and a half, and then my father chased and tail, pretty much left out the picture. My father like left the picture after a year and a half, and then he would pop up periodically and all that stuff, but for the most part, it was.
So my question is,
Yeah.
culturally,
But yeah,
what do men do?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Culturally, what do men do?
What do men do?
they work, then bring the bread home. Breadwinners, I
Yeah.
guess.
They bring the bread, and then impregnate.
Culturally, in my culture, like they're just supposed to be like bring the bread home and impregnate.
But
They have the kids.
what I'm
and
getting
then
to
women
is, do
take
they
care of
stick
the
around?
kids, like
Not
yeah,
many.
depends on the
They're
depends on the
supposed to.
person.
All right,
They're
so
supposed to, but
so
depends on the person, right?
Dominican speaking, they are men find women, impregnate women.
Yeah.
Impregnate women.
Yeah.
Move on, impregnate. When what Sri Lankan. I don't know anything about Sri Lankan culture, but my understanding is that. Hold on, we lost the Instagram. So everything will go on the YouTube. Sri Lankan, I don't know, men find women. My understanding of Sri Lanka is not Indian, right? But it's Asian,
South
Indian type culture. Men are introduced to a younger woman, a super younger woman, a super younger woman.
And it doesn't always have to be a younger woman. It almost has to be someone that can take care of you.
Yes.
So like
because,
that's what it like that's what they look
because
at.
men can't do laundry. They can't do shit.
That's what that's looked at.
So men are introduced to a woman.
Yeah.
Typically much more younger. Typically much more younger, right?
That have been
and then the women are said, all right, you have the breadwinner, and then the man has to provide. But in Dominican culture, man, breadwinner, wins a lot of bread.
Yeah.
A lot of different places. Right? A lot of different places.
Yeah.
It's not always like that. It's not always like that.
Dude, just for the record, James and I grew up very American. So like we don't know.
Yeah.
No, it's not always like that.
We grew up in a weird kind of derelict. If man meets woman in college, dates, they have a kid, they live together forever.
Yeah,
like that's
right.
James, would you disagree?
Yeah, the reality is a little more complicated than that, but like when we were kids, that's what we thought the story was.
Yeah, but did your parents meet in college?
No.
Outside of college?
Yeah.
At work?
Don't think so.
I don't know.
So, I don't know. It's you know what? Honestly, the story of my parents coming to be in a relationship is not something I want to care to know or really want to know.
Right. So, but Sri Lankan culture, you got a typically older man, late 20s.
I don't know. It just depends. Like,
and woman outside of.
I've dated people that were like around
but
my
not your
age
culture,
and like in my
one generation before you.
Yeah, it's you have to date someone that's like bringing someone to the table.
Yeah, but
and
as
a woman,
but the man brings.
If you're not like if you're not able to take care of the family or whatever, like the man doesn't look at you as.
But the man brings the career, and the woman brings. Am I wrong on this? I don't know. I feel like I'm trying to set the table.
It's not always like this. It's not always like this, but there still is a factor of that in this, like still day to day. Like there is a factor of that.
So Kalea, you're basically in New York, right?
Yeah.
I feel like you and I are kind of the same on this because you've been in New York forever.
Mm-hmm.
So when you meet a guy in New York, what do you expect?
I have no expectations.
You don't have
You can't have expectations.
No, hold on.
Like,
No,
that's a tough question to ask.
And hold up. I asked you your parents.
Right.
And your parents are from Georgia?
No, my parents are born and raised in New York.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just that my grandparents were from the South.
So Clay and I are talking about a little more New York. I'm asking you guys because you're I don't know. I feel like a little more connected with the Dominican and the Sri Lankan.
Mm-hmm.
So Clay and I are a little bit more New York. So when the New York culture happens, you got how long ago did your parents meet?
My parents met in the 70s.
No shit. Really?
My parents are old.
All right. So your parents met in the 70s.
Yeah.
Father, what did he do?
My dad was in retail.
Okay, my father was an engineer in the 70s.
Let me back that up. My parents actually met through friends. They lived kind of close to each other, but they didn't start dating until later on. So they knew about each other when they were teenagers.
Well, let me ask you a question. What did your father bring to the table? What did your mother bring to the table?
My dad actually took my mom out of a bad relationship.
Oh.
Yeah.
I feel like you got a similar vibe.
Yeah.
I feel like you got a similar.
No, she was in an abusive relationship. So so my dad kind of took her out of that situation and had the dude.
But our culture is very American. Like it's not Sri Lanka. It's not roots.
It's
outside of the U.S. Like I feel like because here's what happens. your parents went together like these in the U.S. puritanical roots, right? Like where you're like, you're not going to be with anybody else. We meet each other, we compliment each other.
But that's
We're
not
gonna
how it
But that was
was.
the irony, though. Because
But no,
But that
let me
was-
ask you.
that's not
Let me
how
ask
it
you.
was.
Did your parents want to overcome every obstacle?
I don't think so, because my father, in the longest relationship he was in before my mother was like 2 or 3 years. Before my mom.
And then your mother what? Wanted to overcome every obstacle?
I don't think my mom wanted to. My mom wanted to be with him because he was funny. You know, he had a laissez-faire type of attitude, and he was
That's a
just
cool
known
dude.
at it. Yeah, he was just that cool person. That was like his nickname. So she liked that, and the fact that, you know, he's a sweet talker, my dad.
same.
So
Right? So that's how
yeah,
mom. 'Cause
so she wanted to be that, but I don't think it was a I'll contain him type, because she couldn't tame
No,
my
she wasn't
dad.
trying to contain him. She was trying to fit into. She wanted to turn that into a everlasting relationship.
Yeah, she wanted to. Yeah, she definitely wanted to be with my father. My father wanted to continue being him though. Even being
Which is like for me in a relationship, I don't want to change being me.
right.
Now, kind of a relationship, and I want to build a family from there. But that continue being you element of it is you don't want a relationship that wants to compromise, right? Like it's a weird contingency to have. Like, what about this relationship is trying to cancel who you are? But my point is, James, is just that culturally there are other elements that tear away from the American man and woman.
But a lot of it is the core, though, because the irony of it is both my grandparents from my dad and my mom's side are very religious and very into tune with, like, you know, you won't have any intercourse until you marry, and
But how many other people did they date? One.
grandfather,
The only
just my grand,
Exactly.
just my grandfather, and like I feel like that's the irony of it, and my upbringing was to the point where when my dad actually left, my dad's side of the family, both my grandparents, they obviously didn't teach him that, so they felt that they needed to be there and like somewhat try to.
But here's what's up is I feel like James. I feel like the U.S. is a very weird puritanical, like biodome of just they want to force this on you, and then the rest of the world has this kind of weird penguin sexual, like you're trying to.
No, it depends on where you are in the world. It very much depends.
But in
Like-
Asian cultures, they're very
one-on-one.
Very
But
Well, it depends on where in Asia you are.
But that's why I defer to Kalea and I. We are, I feel like only one generation. My grandparents are our first generation in the U.S. But I feel like we have this weird U.S. kind of similarity, whereas the generation before that was a little bit different. Does that make sense to you?
Well, I think that people in our generation, and I'm going to go plus 5 years and minus 10 years, are realizing that the precepts that they had been indoctrinated with by viewing their parents and their grandparents' generation don't have any intrinsic value. And
I feel
there's no reason to stick to a model that doesn't have any justifiable base.
But I feel like that 1950s to 2000s one-on-one relationship is kind of a corrupt model.
I don't think so.
That's what I'm saying.
But
That's what I just said.
But yeah, I'm summarizing what James just said. So my ancestors are my great grandparents are pre 1955.
Yeah.
Right. My grandfather, my father, my mother, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and that's what we have in common. But I think before that, culturally speaking, when you look at your parents, your parents are from where?
Yeah.
They didn't grow up here.
No.
So they don't.
My mom did. My mom and my grandma grew up here.
But I feel like there was an external element to that 1950s, 60s.
Oh yeah,
70s,
for sure.
Which is when you compare that and contrast that to when you juxtapose that to the 1960s, 1970s, 1980s model.
Yeah.
It's a different model. So now all bets are off because we have Tinder, we have everything
Dating
else.
app, yeah, it's so different.
But I think when it comes to raising good children, okay, which you might not know about. But I think when it comes to raising children and fostering the next generation, what do we build that on? We're not going to build that on Tinder. We're not going to build it on Tinder. So what do we build it on? Right? So you want to have mother, father figure in your life.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a father figure in my life. I had a mythological father figure because my father died young, and then my family built him up, right?
Yeah.
So that's not fair to me or my children because I have this thing. Now somebody,
you know the concept of your father too,
but it was mythical, right? So if I have people in my generation that grew up. If I have people in my generation that grew up with a father, without a father, like, what's the best element moving forward?
Yeah.
What's the best element moving forward? What's that? No. How do you build?
It's hard.
How old's your child? When it comes to building the next generation, how do we do that? How do we do that? Is it through reinforcing the relationship we have? Or is it through reinforcing what? Dealing with the world.
There's no way to build with this generation. There's really no way to build that. It's very hard, very. At this point,
because remember, for the first 9 years, there's no Facebook, there's no Tinder, there's no. They're with you, right? They're with you. They're with you and your family.
Yeah.
There's no external influence. After that, they get Facebook, they get Instagram, they get TikTok, they get this external influence. So I got a point right now where I have nieces that are on TikTok for 3 hours a day, 5 hours a day. How can I influence them to be good people?
I'll tell you all about it. What's the question again? How do we influence?
It's very hard.
James,
you lead by example.
It's all on the parents to teach them morality.
Like, hold on. But what I'm saying is that the parents are the environmental influence, right?
Yeah.
Parents have the single most influence on kids out of everything that happens in their
For
lives.
at least the first 10 years.
Yeah.
You listen. Pay attention.
James, I think I see a strong downhill. It's not good. So let's wrap up.
Okay.
James, I never wrap it up.
Well, good luck having kids.
Isn't it? You don't want sober chatter.
That's how you get in relationships.
Yeah.
This is the end of episode 100. It's 11 or 12.
This is the start of the new season.
11.
I'm so sorry.
We'll recap on Tuesday.
New season to be pleasing.
Woo! It's simply a teasing. Hope we're appeasing.
It was
no
not.
reason. Changing like the season.
It was nice to have Kalea.
Players the fucking best, James.
So it's called Married for What? And it's basically telling about what happens after you say I do.
Get in this shit, bro. You can't even see your face. You see
Bro,
my
you're
man's right here?
What is wrong with this?
No, I'll help you.
We got Carlos and Peter here. But we're
Yep.
going to throw,
Have Wheezy.
James, we're going to throw Kalea's podcast in the comments. In the
Yeah.
description.
Yeah, we should.
And
Yeah.
It's a rough episode.
James, what kind of headsets you got, bro?
Logitech G430s.
This is official.
No, they are.
Yeah.
I need some new gaming
Yeah.
headsets, though.
Those are
James,
yeah.
I will catch you next time.
My middle
Okay.
name is James.
Adios.
I'm Peter James.
Cheers, guys.
Yo, SipTalk, let's get drunk, bro. Come on.
All right, my friends. Thank you so much for joining. If you're hearing my voice now and you made it this far, I want to thank you. It means a lot to me that you guys subscribe and that you guys like these podcasts and that you actually listen to them. It takes a lot of work to keep them going, and I appreciate all that you guys do and all the comments and the feedback. So from my heart, thank you guys. I'll see you next time.
I like PBR. I just got priced out of it.